with an acknowledgement. I am very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be in a church like this that gives me both time for vacation and increasing my education through experiences. I'm also very fortunate to be given funds to pursue continuing education when a great many do not. Furthermore, I am deeply fortunate to be in a marriage and a family and a time in my life, be in a position here at church and in a financial situation to do the very things I'd like to talk to you about today. Kate and Zoe, who let me take a week away, my brother Reese, who put me on his Delta Airlines family list, the session for the permission to pursue not so much continuing education, but in this case, continuing illumination, continuing inspiration. Recent surveys tell me that over half of Americans have as one of their major goals in life to see the world. Yet that same research will tell you that only half ever do. I want to acknowledge my privilege with you this morning and my thanksgiving for what now will become an ongoing opportunity for me. And in doing so, recognize what I want to share with you today is indeed out of reach for a great many. I want to share with you reflections based on my time away over these last 3 weeks. First, I'll say very thankful, very, very thankful for those who filled in the pulpit while I was gone. In the back of my mind, I've been thinking about this parable for today, this mustard seed. The smallest of seeds, it's barely there as described, yet you know the story. If it's given the chance to grow, it grows big. It grows only if we allow it to grow. If we trust that something so seemingly small can grow and grow and grow, like we know it is possible, if only it is planted. The mustard seed comes to us as a parable, of course, a way of teaching, using what was common among us, among them, to teach us how to live and believe and act in uncommon ways during common times. The mustard seed from my time away has been a small seed about trust. A small seed of trust that was waiting to be planted and waiting to grow. It's been the small seed of promise that getting outside of your own everyday will reveal something important about you and your life. The mustard seed planted becomes something formidable, something you can't ignore, something you must deal with, reckon with. That's certainly been true for me over this last week. And so I pray that something here speaks to you, encouraging you to plant a similar, barely there seed, and allowing it to grow and thrive in you, in your community, in your household, in your hearts and minds. My mustard seed was small, like even the biggest of our ideas always are. I was going to take a week for continuing education. Zoe and my family, Kate and Zoe, were going to spend an additional week with my in-laws in West Virginia after we left our annual beach vacation. Let me report to the great many of you who have followed the travails of my life along the North Carolina shore that now that I'm away, I could tell you nothing happened. There was no weather. There were no tow trucks or medical emergencies or EMTs or life flights. The worst thing that happened, I got sand in my shoes. Thank you, Lord Jesus. So while Kate and Zoe were in West Virginia, and they still are now with Kate's parents, I was going to travel somewhere. I was going to go somewhere. I was going to use the gift that my brother gave me. I was going to fly for free anywhere Delta Airlines goes, provided there was a seat for me to occupy. I always wanted to do this. I am one of the half of all Americans who wants to see the world. I assume some of you are too. I want to see what lies out there, somewhere beyond the place that I know. So my seed was starting by taking this week off, telling my brother the dates I'd like to travel, and then the hard part of trusting to see where that seed would take me when the time came. I admit that if I'm sounding a little hyperbolic about travel, it's a concern, I understand. But I share this with you because I was traveling and I had no idea where I was going until about 20 minutes before the boarding process started. I had no idea where I'd end up until I was given a seat on a plane. I ended up in London, England. I was there for the week. But I didn't really know that that's where I was going until I put my foot on the plane. So this is what I mean to you about trust. It's about allowing something to grow, confident what they say about this seed is true, that it will produce in abundance if you just simply let it. So as scary as it was, I decided to let it. When it was time to pack for leaving home, I were going to spend 12 days at the beach and then in the same carry-on luggage go somewhere for a week. Now, in the beginning time, it was looking like London might pay off, but it was too early to be sure. Around the time that the family was gathered in North Carolina for the annual beach trip, the list had expanded. My brother says, it could be London, or it could be Rome, or it could be Barcelona, or it could be Nice in the south of France. Oh yeah, and Tokyo, but that's a 12-and-a-half-hour flight. By the time I got to Atlanta, by the time I showed up for a flight to somewhere, the list had whittled itself down. My brother says, hey, you can go to Venice, you can go to London, or you can go to Tokyo. On the train that connects the airport hotels in Atlanta to the terminal, my brother calls again. He's been monitoring half of the world and the available seats to get there this entire time, and he tells me, okay, Brett, you could go to Venice, or you could go to London. But the London flight takes off in 45 minutes, and you don't have a seat. The Venice flight takes off a few hours later. It looks good. I showed up for the gate, a sweaty mess, thankful for TSA pre-check, having all but run through the parts of the terminal. I showed up to the gate for the flight to London, since that was the one that was first, and I waited. I waited as the gate agents got their ducks in a row. That's what they're doing before the flight. They started to work through the names of folks like me, flying standby, hoping to get an upgrade, so I waited. And I waited. And I waited. And I assume it was only like 20 minutes, but it felt like eternity, because the plan was to wait it out. I'm not good at waiting, especially for something like this. I could wait if I knew. I had no idea. So the plan was to wait it out. The plan was to wait it out and see what kind of what kind of seat they were going to give me. If the seat was good, I'd get on the plane. If it wasn't, I'd reject it, and I'd try for Venice. But if the seat to Venice was bad, I'd start all over. I'd wait around until midnight, starting then with Tokyo, and then with London. Or as my brother would say, well, we'll see. I was in the bathroom getting changed, putting on a clean shirt and trying to freshen up, just simply for the sake of someone who I actually might be sitting next to. I was leaving the bathroom when I heard the gate agent call my name. The seat looked good. And what do they say about a better than a bird in the hand? So it looked like, for that minute, I was going to London. And then they called my name again. They gave me the wrong seat. Oh, gosh. This one was okay, though. So I got on the plane, and for the first time in 2 months, I knew where I was going. See, here's the thing about not knowing where you're going. I had until the plane took off to book a hotel. I had until the plane took off to find out how to get from whatever hotel I ended up in to there from London Heathrow. I had until the plane took off, until AT&T, I could contact them and get the international coverage and have to actually tell them I was going to England and not Italy or Spain or France or Japan. And I didn't know until I sat down in seat 20A for the 8.5-hour nonstop from Atlanta Hartsfield to His Majesty's London Heathrow Airport. When I arrived, I showed up with a hotel and the appropriate immigration clearances and a general idea on how to get from here to there, and a deeply existential need to take a shower. But that would have to wait, because the fruits of taking this particular flight meant that I got into London at about 7:50 a.m. And if you've ever been to a hotel, you know they don't let you check in at that time. I'd have to wait till 3 p.m. I walked to a place, I got a cup of coffee and sat down for an hour. And there's a reason, let me tell you, that England is famous for tea and not so much for coffee. I headed to the hotel. I tried to play the sympathy card. Oh, come on, look at me. I just got off the plane. I started this day in Atlanta. It was a lost cause. They were kind enough to stow my luggage, though, and since it was about 9 a.m. then, I had 6 hours to kill before I'd be welcomed back. You know, when Jesus tells the crowd in the Gospel of Mark the parable of the mustard seed, he's surrounded by strangers. It's a crowd gathered by the sea, and Jesus is teaching about the kingdom of God. The crowd is the focus, and like the seeds themselves, the individuals here gathered seem small by comparison. Each stranger, each seed with potential, each stranger able to be planted, able to grow. The hotel agent took my name, got my affairs in order, took my luggage, and pointed to the door and sent me on my way. And for that moment on, I was alone. I was completely a stranger somewhere else. Now that I think about it, as I wrote this morning, about 9 a.m. I gave my name to the hotel agent. I did again about 3 p.m. They called me Mr. Swanson. I can't do a British accent. That's probably for the best. They called me Mr. Swanson each time. The next person said, "Thank you, Mr. Swanson," when I went to the British Museum. And then, by my recollection, until I checked out of the hotel on Friday morning, those were only the 3 times that anyone ever said my name. I was a complete and total stranger. It had its advantages. It was liberating not being from there, but just being there. It was eye-opening. It was educational for sure. I discovered how many of my habits are there because I am known to you and to the many around me. Take getting dressed for an instance. I don't wear this when I'm not at work. But I dress this way on Sundays because you know that I'm your pastor. And I know there are certain expectations, even if I look the part in the heat of the summer. And not knowing where I was going while packing proved to be challenging, considering Nice, which is the south of France, I'd spend my entire time along the beach. But Tokyo, I understand, is humid and hot this time of year, and anyone who goes to Rome in the summer will tell you it is sweltering. I decided that down in the psyche somewhere, I would have to look nice. But I would wear shorts to keep my sanity. That was a good idea. It was a good idea right up until I decided that with my 6 hours, I would attend a communion service at Westminster Abbey. And entering this massive cathedral, because I was a solo traveler, I was given a spot in the very front row. Right there next to people who showed up in suits and bow ties. The guy next to me at the end of the row was wearing a coat with tails. And here I was, a sweaty mess. I was embarrassed. This is not how a pastor dresses for church. This is not how a pastor looks for worship. It all ran through my head. I tried to make myself look small. It might have worked. No one was looking at me, I finally acknowledged, just right up until the point when in the other part of the massive abbey, they were broadcasting for the 2,000 other people who were at the service. I had no idea until I saw the camera. And here I was, all wrinkly, sweaty, albeit handsome. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? I tried to make myself look small until I had to go forward, and if you've ever taken communion in an Episcopal or an Anglican service, you come forward. And then, all self-conscious, all worried, I went like this and they gave me a wafer. And then, like an Episcopalian I was before, or the Anglican, you drink from the cup instead of dipping it. There with the communion in my hands and now in my body, and now in my soul, I realized that I had taken this service, this opportunity, and I made it about how I felt. Not about the church, not about the God who welcomed me, the God who felt a certain way about me. I was sweaty, I felt gross, that is demonstrable. I've been traveling for now about nearly 20 hours, and all of that is what I brought to worship, and I was there with people in suits and tails and the priestly vestments of the abbey, and then I learned something about being a stranger, that it was a gift to just simply be present. To be there, to be planted, and to grow without having to worry about what shape the shrub would take when it was seen by the world. After communion at Westminster Abbey, which is a phrase that I'll never get tired of saying, I walked back to the hotel. It was liberating. Once again, I became a stranger in London. I was soaking up what I could. I saw myself in the people around me. But let me end with this. Have you ever wanted to be a stranger somewhere? Back in Pennsylvania, you know how I went grocery shopping on Sundays? Okay, I could go down this aisle, and then when I got to the other side, I'd go like, okay, not this one. The tortillas are going to have to wait. I became a stranger in London. It was liberating. It was illuminating. But we've been placed in this life so that we could be known. I didn't know that that's what I was missing. That in this time of London, among the British Museum, among things I'd only read about, among places that I had never seen, I didn't know it was until I got on one of those double-decker buses that being known was what I was missing. I didn't know until I sat down next to a woman from Manchester. We struck up a conversation. Can you guess what it was about? Oh, let's quickly decide the differences between UK and American politics, shall we? Oh, yes, please do share me your impressions of life abroad, and I will do the same. She asked me what I did in the States. Oh, great. Here we go. But she heard it. She didn't sit straight up. She didn't go, oh, proper. That's as close as it gets. Although a Manchester accent is very different. She just talked to me there on the bus. She's a retired physical therapist. Having now learned what I did, she told me that she was a physical therapist up until recently, had retired during COVID. We rode the bus until my stop arrived. I almost thought about sticking around, staying on the bus to see where she was going, and then doubling back to continue our conversation. But I had already taken the bus the wrong way once on this trip, because driving on the other side of the street messes with your brain. I didn't want to do that again, so I said, this is my stop. And then, for the first time in over a week, for the first time since I've been there, someone stuck out their hand, and they volunteered their name. I did the same. We shook hands and said goodbye. And it wasn't until I checked out of the hotel at 3 p.m. the next day that anybody had ever said my name. Anonymity can be a powerful, beautiful thing. But more so than seeing shows at the West End, or walking through Chinatown, or eating at a fish and chips place, that little seed found on the bus was the richest soil I found across the pond. And there in that moment, that seed grew beyond my imagination. When somebody in this strange land stuck their hand out and told me about their life and called me by my name. I got a chance while I was at Westminster Abbey to visit with the dean of the Abbey. This is a big deal, I recognize, because though we are both clergy, his clergy life is a little different than mine. This is the guy you would have seen on TV. He presided over the Queen's funeral. He presided over the King's coronation. And now, here in my sweaty shorts and my less than clean polo, we are talking about what life is like as a visiting clergy. He just got back from sabbatical. I would take 20 minutes with Marcia from Manchester over any conversation, even with the king himself, because Marcia called me by name, and there in the strange land made me feel known. And in that was the richest soil I could ever imagine. Amen. Friends, for a world in which we live in and the one we seek, let us stand and let us sing together.